Today's episode is brought to you by DNA Sports Training. If you or someone you know wants to take their game to the next level, then hit up DNA Sports Training. Visit DNASportsDenver.com to book a training session. We offer specialized sports training from football to track and field and everything else in between. Whether you're an offensive or defensive lineman wanting to get better off the ball, or you're an athlete wanting to improve your speed and agility, we have something for you over at DNA. Visit DNASportsDenver.com right now and sign up.
Yo,
What up, what up, what up, bro? How's it going?
back another again.
How's it been?
It's been all right.
It's been all right, man.
We get a little heated in the last time we did this, so we'll see how this one goes.
Oh yeah, no, it was a little heated. It's just a little friendly debate.
Little argument.
One of those fun little things we like to do here and there. They should see us off camera. If they thought that was tough, off camera, we're a hoot.
We're a hooting and hollering.
A hoot and a hollering.
Hollering and the hooting.
Hey man, wrestling is getting going, bro. We talked about it last time. We had our first tournament. Getting ready to embark on our second one. Took the little holiday off a little bit, you know what I
There you
mean?
go.
And now we're getting back into the swing of things. And there's a tournament coming up, I believe, on the 3rd, and then another one the following weekend. So it's tournament after tournament, and I can't wait. I'm excited, though, because 8 or 9 of our starters for football are all wrestling.
Sick.
Majority of our line is wrestling.
Sick. Dude, I think wrestling, and I didn't wrestle in high school, and I should have, and I have my excuses. That's what they are. But I think wrestling makes you a better football player for sure, and a better athlete.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of sports that kind of apply into football, right? Track, wrestling, even basketball, baseball. Like they
Yeah.
all could apply in different ways. But I think wrestling definitely gets you the most prepared for football and what you're going to deal with.
I seen this video on I think it was Instagram or Facebook. It was the Cleveland Browns defensive back making a tackle, and like he did like the slide under a blocker
He shoot.
and then made the tackle,
Yeah.
and it was a straight wrestling move.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yep, there you go, right there. That's like tangible proof on why wrestling helps you make you a better football player, better tackler." Shout out to the Junior Vikings, though. Shout out to Coach Zach and all the fellas over there. That's dope. Hearing 8 or 9 kids of our starting football team can wrestle.
Yeah, you know who probably didn't wrestle and isn't a good person because of it is your boy over in Indianapolis, Jim Irsay. I don't know about that dude. Maybe he did wrestle, but he lost all the traits wrestling teaches you along his way because he is pretty much a POS in my opinion.
Yo, he's wrestling with some demons.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard or seen anything that he has done recently, but recently Jim Irsay has came out of left field and saying that his 2014 arrest was strictly because he is a white billionaire. Man, I didn't know being white and being a billionaire was a reason for you to be targeted, but I guess in 2023 it is.
You know what? In 2023, being a white male does carry a little bit of different responsibility, I guess. But a white rich billionaire, dude, come on, Ursay. Like, you can find out another excuse other than this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? That's what's wrong with the world. It's always we're allowing financial status and wealth to give people a sense of entitlement. We put like so much emphasis on the status and the wealth that most people that become rich feel like they're better than others. And that's what's wrong, right? I have this money, so I should get out of this, or I shouldn't be pulled over, or now because I have this money, it's the reason you're pulling me over. Like,
Yeah.
This isn't the streets.
Yeah.
Like, we don't see you as a bag. Like, you're not being robbed,
Yeah.
right? It's not someone comparing, if does he have money, I'm gonna hit him up and he's a lick, or does he not? I'm gonna leave him alone. Nah, this ain't that, bro. Like, if you're doing the crime, you must do the time, bro. It is what it is.
I think it's irresponsible, bro. And he had this interview on HBO where he said, I quote, I am prejudiced against because I'm a rich white billionaire. He said with Andre Kramer, Unreal Sports with Brian Gumble. He went on to say, if I'm just the average guy down the block, they're not pulling me in. Of course not, added Ursay, whose net worth is $4.3 billion, according to Forbes. Come on, man. Like, me and you were kind of talking off camera on this, and I have an issue with that, bro, because I don't agree with him, dude. Like, I don't. Yes, being a billionaire does put a target on your back. Having money puts a target on your back, but I don't necessarily feel like it's the target of the police that is on your back. You know, unless you're doing something stupid, and if you're out there driving drunk or driving under the influence of pills or whatever it was in his situation, and I know he's been involved with both, like. You just got to take accountability of your actions, bro. You got to be responsible for your actions and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I messed up. It is what it is, and move on. You can't come out, almost 10 years later, accusing this police force of pulling him over because he's a rich white billionaire, in America. I think it's just irresponsible, bro, and it sets the wrong message for those that are fans of your team and that support your team. It sends the wrong message to the team is to say, hey, you know what? Make an excuse, guys. Don't take accountability for your actions.
Yeah, it really sends the wrong message to the youth and to everybody else, right? Like, you have money, you get away with things, or if you have money, you're gonna be a target. Like, why do we put so much emphasis on money? It's ridiculous. Like, we always talk about if we're equal because of sex, religion, race, and all those other things, but we don't talk about why money is constantly the reason why we're divided.
Yeah.
Right? Why, if you're poor, you can't go here, or you can't do this, or you can't do that, or if you're rich, you get these perks over those other people. Like, it's just a bunch of bullshit.
Well,
bro.
we talked about it a couple of segments back about having money for like youth sports and youth extracurriculars and stuff like that, bro. Like, trying to find how we can make that work. There's some people that ain't got to worry about things like that, dude. Yeah. And I think if you don't have to worry about things like that, that's a true blessing. For Ursay not to have to worry about things like that because of his economic status is a true blessing. I don't think you should try to use it to demonize, a group of police officers who were doing their job because you were driving drunk or under the influence. Like, and I don't think you should do that shit 10 years later when the whole, kind of everything's shifted so much in terms of how we view race relations and how we view the police dealing with people. Like, there's been a big shift in the world in the last 10 years, and this dude is coming out with this now. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's just irresponsible. It's almost like if you're trying to jump on the woke train and try to get people to have sympathy for you and saying, you're trying to get in line with them. That's not how it works, bro. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just, you can't all of a sudden be oppressed, bro. That ain't how it works.
Yeah, and in all honesty, like, to be this type of person who does not take any sort of accountability is also a part of the problem. Like, you should be held to a higher standard when you are a face of an organization, when you are a billionaire, when you have this money, because people look up to you. So if you're out there in the streets committing DUIs, you shouldn't be. You should be holding yourself to that higher standard. You should be knowing that there is more visibility on you. It's not that you're a target. There's just more eyes watching you because you're more looked up to in certain aspects. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, where the responsibility of being a billionaire, of being an owner of an organization, and take some accountability and just move on from your mistakes and try to learn from them instead of blaming other people.
Juan, does he feel like he should have been shown some grace because of who he is?
Probably.
Because now that's using your billionaire status in the opposite direction, right? Like, just because you're a billionaire, do you think you should have been like looked past that you're driving recklessly or that you're driving under the influence because you're Jim Irsay and you're a rich white billionaire? Like, dude, like you can take his comments in so many different ways, bro, and they're all equally bad the way he laid them. Like,
Yeah.
Yo, just shut up, take responsibility for your actions. Come on, bro. To suggest he has no responsibility is just bogus, man. Be a leader.
To be a owner in the NFL, right? and to witness. I mean, obviously his incident happened before Henry Ruggs, right? But he's speaking about his incident now after Henry Ruggs,
Yep.
and knowing your situation could have ended up like his situation,
And where's
and it didn't. God forbid
Yep.
that something bad would have happened in your situation as bad as it did in Henry Ruggs' situation. But what would you have been saying then?
Yep.
I don't need to go to prison because I'm a white billionaire.
Yep. And where's Roger Goodell come down on this, bro? Like, the owners pay his bills and the owners keep him employed. So I know he can't speak out too much about some of these things that these owners do or say or how they conduct their business. But like, where's your statement at, bro? Like, you should come out and be like, hey, dude, just shut up. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't got to go there with it. Like, there's no reason to go there with it. Your comments are divisive. How do you think people inside his locker room feel?
For sure.
Trying to use that excuse.
Not only that, his peers, because now is he now creating a target?
And how many of them people in his locker room and on that staff have been prejudiced before, had prejudices shown against them, and then you're going to come out and be like, yeah, well, I've been prejudiced against because I'm a white billionaire.
After all
Like,
the scandal
come
and
on,
his-
dog. There ain't
yeah.
no sympathy there. There ain't no, like, come on, bro. That's like trying to hold a flag saying I'm oppressed when you're not.
Those who live in glass house should not cast stones.
Yeah, man. I just think he just needs to take responsibility and let the issue die, bro. No one was thinking about this shit until you brought it up again. And then he just stokes up all kinds of old thoughts that I have about how, he's had several run-ins with the police. And I doubt that those are because of him being a white, rich billionaire. I have a feeling it's because of other things that he did. And it just goes, it's a bigger problem when we talked about it with Vince McMahon. We talked about it with other people. It's a big problem when the people highest up don't take responsibility for their actions, because then it tells everyone else they don't have to take responsibility. And that's a big problem with this country right now.
It is definitely a big problem.
I saw. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. Paper, rock, scissors.
Go ahead.
We were talking about old folks of the past, and I saw some craziness that you sent me about Drew Brees, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, he was saying that he would still be playing football if he can throw.
It's crazy, right? Can't even enjoy a normal day of catch with his boy.
Dude, what are your thoughts about, like, obviously football's a violent game, and but beyond that, it takes tolls on your body, even just like any sports do. You think about basketball players in their knees, and football players like linemen in their shoulders after years. You think about people like Mark Schlereth, who had like fucking 30 surgeries in his career. Like, what do you feel about like the toll that football takes on a person?
I mean, it's crazy because we love this game so much, but it does take such a toll on our bodies. But we all have to take accountability for the fact that we continue to endure it. We
true.
continue to put ourselves in that position, you know what I mean, to play the game. And I'm sure if Drew can go back to the time where they were like, if you continue to play, you might not be able to use this arm again. And he would make the choice of continuing to chase that Super Bowl, right? I think that sometimes our love for something can allow us to constantly overlook the risk.
Yeah, we'll always find a way.
Yeah.
Like, if we love doing something, like people ask all the time, how do you do this, that, and the other? You got a family, like coaching.
Yeah.
How do you do it all? And it's like, if you love something, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. It's crazy though. I wish like the NFL, like I know they do a lot, and I'm sure there's much more that they can do, right? They're one of the biggest corporations around. Like
Yeah.
football is going to probably be around for years to come.
Yep.
And has been around for years. And so I think that there are probably more avenues that they can go down to trying to help prevent some of these long-term, lifelong injuries for players. But then there's some instances where they can't. But I think in those instances where they can't, they should do more in helping them after the fact, trying to resolve some of their lifelong issues. I think often you hear about players that were in the NFL, whether they were in the NFL for a day or 5 years, it really doesn't matter. They put their life on the line and their bodies on the line, that I think they deserve some sort of lifelong medical coverage after the fact.
I mean, I would agree, and that's what that lawsuit was with the concussion stuff, and some of the information that's held back. But I think that's also that that very thought is the reason why like a lot of this stuff is trying to be legislated out the game, you know. And going back to Drew Brees, like that right shoulder definitely took a beating over the years. Obviously, Miami made a mistake passing on him in favor of Dante Culpepper just because that right shoulder was such a concern, and for him to be able to have the career he had in New Orleans with that arm just speaks volumes about what it takes to be prepared and to come back and play. And it also speaks to the fact that sometimes we don't want our heroes to leave. You know, you think about here locally, Denver, like John Elway. People didn't want like John Elway to leave and wanted him to play forever and play another year, but that man literally couldn't walk no more.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Even less, right? Like you see statements like Justin Jefferson telling people, "I don't care about your fantasy football teams. Like my health is way more important than your fantasy football teams right now."
Yep.
And it's true. Like oftentimes as fans and as consumers of these sports, we put these people in like a you can't be hurt category. Like you can't allow you need to
Need you
play.
back. I need
We
them-
gotta
the
win.
points. Yeah.
We gotta get to the Super Bowl. We're all chasing a trophy that we never even gonna touch.
And these people are all just human, just like us too, bro.
You know?
Obviously, they get paid to play a game, and so people feel like there's a certain level of something that's owed to them. But these guys are just people like us, man. They got bodies that break down, and they got life to think out after football, which is why I don't ever. I had never got beefs when these dudes are asking for more money or asking for their contract to be extended or to be guaranteed or, because pro sports is quick to spit you out, especially NFL. They quick to cut you and just swallow the dead money, and then you're out there on trying to figure it out. Trying to put the pieces together later on in life. And football, it's one of them sports. Look at running backs, 3 to 5 year shelf life, and that's it, bro. You got to maximize while you can.
Yeah, you got to think about our bodies, right? We're getting older. We were once young men, and yes, we both played sports as well. But even without the amount of play that some of these athletes endure, as we get older, we feel aches, we feel pains. We get out of bed and we're like, oh, I don't want to. Just imagine putting your body through a car accident every single day.
Yeah. Well, we talked about, you mentioned about getting, healthcare for these people long term. And I think, that's why the game, the league is trying to legislate things like hits the head out of the game. You know what I mean? But what about these dudes that need knee replacement by the time they're 40, 45 years old, hip replacement by the time they're 40, 45 years old? Because just you think about how much they run, think about how much they work, how much they do physically over the course of a career, especially the people that are in there long term. The injuries that they sustain, think about guys like Bo Jackson, whose life was completely altered due to injuries. They know what they're signing up for when they get signed up for it. There's part of that. And, for people not to have any sympathy for it because that's their logic. Like, oh, well, they know what they're getting signed up for. Like, yeah, dude, that's like, we get that. Right. But at the same time, if an organization is making billions off of your blood and sweat, there should be some sort of, even if it's like reduced cost or something like that, there should be something, maybe deferring portions of payments into a fund to take care of those things later on down in life. Like there's just there's no real saying what you're gonna need later on in life, as you put it, going through car crashes every day of your career.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why you're starting to see a lot more guaranteed contracts. Players are getting a lot smarter, with the way they're negotiating themselves because they have to look out for themselves. It's kind of sad, though, and the way you brought it, what it brought into my mind is like workman's comp.
Yeah.
Like this inevitably at the end of the day is a work-related injury. So if I got hurt at work, doing something, I have the opportunity to fall back on a workman's comp claim or do something like that. Well, what happens to them? Yeah. No one tells me, oh, you're going to work, you're supposed to get her. That's what happens. You're enduring that, trying to chase that bag.
Yeah.
That's the same thing they're doing.
It's a little different for us, though.
It isn't.
It is, though.
How?
Because we're not fucking going to work unless you work like as a first responder or something like that has like or construction worker where there's like physical risks. Like we're not going to work unless you put it, enduring car wrecks every day at work.
We're not, but there are some people that do. There are some fields that do, and there's things in place to account for that. But for when it comes to a professional athlete, we're gonna tell them at the end of their career, oh, you shouldn't have bad knees as an NBA player because you never got injured. That's not the NBA's fault. You figured it out.
Right.
Nah, bro, that's wear and tear from the work,
Well,
from the years of working. Like that's the years of service injury.
obviously the shit that they did with the concussion stuff and keeping some of that information away, and now it's more public. But my thing is like they'll legislate concussions out. Like Kareem Jackson serving a 4-game suspension because he plays old school and
Dirty.
some of the hits. I mean, you can argue he's dirty. There's some hits that you see that shit in football all the time, and there's no one ever saying nothing about it. But they're trying to get those hits out of the game, right? But like, dude, if I'm playing and a dude went and took out my knees versus taking out up top, I'd rather have him take out up top than my knees. Because like the rehab back from a knee injury, that's pretty fucking substantial.
It is, but
Like a torn ACL, you're done. Concussion, you come back in like 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
maybe, or you turn into Aaron Hernandez
Perhaps, yes.
or Chris Benoit.
Or you turn
know
into,
what I mean?
or
Like-
you turn into what's the dude from the Houston Oilers? Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
Where you can't walk.
Yeah. No, there or even Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's so many risks to getting an injury anywhere on your body. And that's the point. The risk that they take for us, right? That is why I feel like there should just be more done for all athletes. Like guaranteed money should be kind of a mandatory thing in a sense. Like it shouldn't count towards salary cap. Maybe it should be structured a little bit differently to like guaranteed injury money doesn't count towards the salary cap or whatever like that. So that way teams can still give money without being held to these strict cap guidelines.
Well, you start seeing weird shit like you saw last year with the Raiders telling Derek Carr to stay home.
Yeah.
Because if he gets injured, he's guaranteed on their roster for the following year, right? It's like what some people were saying around here when the Broncos started 1-5, and that if they continue to lose, do you just tell Russell Wilson to stay home? That way you're not guaranteeing that money if he gets hurt. You know what I mean? Like, so you start seeing things like that, and teams start to manipulate things like that, which is just bullshit and shady, in my opinion. But, they're doing things to protect their bottom line from those injuries as well. I think it's funny. It's kind of ironic that they'll do things like that to protect themselves, but they won't do things to protect the player.
Yeah. No doubt.
We're gonna get a little deep on some questions with me, but
Yeah.
like for me, real quick to ask you, like if what was it like to allow DJ to play football? Because he's been playing for a couple years now. He's a young man, like, and you know what the sport is. You know how violent the sport is. You know how many bumps and bruises you get just practicing and playing this sport. So, what was it like for you to be able to be like, yo, when he expressed an interest to wanting to play, or when you introduced the game to him, what was it like for you in terms of settling that kind of debate within yourself?
Well, it was tough because I didn't want DJ. Originally, I kept thinking, like, I'm not going to allow him to play until middle school or high school.
Okay. Which isn't a bad idea.
Strictly because I think that DJ, he's obviously a bigger boy. And with being a bigger boy, that means you're going to be in the trenches. Mm-hmm. And yes, you don't take as many, like,
shit, you take a lot.
As many, like, full speed tackles or blows to the head, but you take more blows to the head on every single play. Every single play, there's contact within the trenches.
Back, shoulders, and hips be
You know what I
killing
mean?
you, boy.
Like, and so you're physically in a fight on every single play in the trenches. And so I thought I was going to hold him out. But DJ was a kid who, in our family, like football's so important to our family that it was kind of hard to, because he fought tooth and nail. We put him in flag, and we're like, oh, you can just play flag. He quit flag football. He said, I'm not playing flag football. Like, I just don't do it. Like, there's no point for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a skill guy. If I was a receiver, I see why I would play flag football, but this does no benefit to me.
Yeah.
Which he's has some truth in that,
not
right?
lying right there,
When we
yeah.
go to 7-on-7 tournaments, it's 7-on-7 or big man comps. Like that's what it is. So he had a point, and he was very, very persistent about playing. So I let him play. And in all honesty, if DJ could play year-round football right now, he would. And he constantly talks about playing football, doing after-season tournaments, and continuing to play football because he loves it so much. And we talked about him committing to it when he gets into middle school strictly because he wants football as his thing.
I think the way you guys are doing it are good though, bro. Like I think like I see a lot of people that are like baseball only or football only or basketball only. And that's I mean, that's cool, but I feel like, dude, like the more sports you do, like it builds your overall athleticism.
I agree.
And you were talking about that earlier, or I don't remember if it was earlier if it was on the other pod, about like just being able to be more well rounded in certain attributes of football or wrestling carry over into football and vice versa. Like, dude, I see so many like you see so many kids get burnt out with a single sport when that's all they do. That I think it's good sometimes to get that change of pace, change of scenery, and then it also like feeds that hunger a little bit, like where I can't wait for football season to come back.
Yeah, I agree. But I also do see the importance in if you're a guy who's built for football, you love playing football, and you plan to play football at the next level, then I see once you get to a certain point committing to that because there's so much that goes into being a really high end recruited high end football player nationally, right? Not just locally. Like the goal at that point is to be a national player,
Yeah.
and in order to do so, you have to go to some of these money grab
Camps and stuff,
camps
yeah.
and tournaments and
Gotta put your name out
and
there.
things like that. You have to network, and so that takes a year round commitment to whatever sport it is. And so when you get to that certain point, I do see the importance in that because it's hard for there to be another Dion, another Russell, another Bo. Like let's keep it real. Like how often do you see really good multi sport athletes in both sports for all at all levels, like in college and the pros, like they played both sports? No, at some point they got to make a choice,
Yeah.
right? And I get that it nurtures them to be an all around athlete, but at the same time, if you're not that guy that's gonna play at both levels professionally, and professionally is what you're trying to get to, then at some point I think you should do yourself a benefit and committing to the one you think you have a better chance at making.
I feel you. I just feel there's also a number of examples of, players that were multi-sport athletes that, got to that pinnacle of where they want to be
For sure.
at, And so there's no one way to skin a cat. I just was curious on how like you felt about getting into it, and obviously your kid's passion for the sport kind of dictates how much more of it they get, right? Like, if they loving this thing and they want to do this thing full on, like, okay, well then obviously that kind of dictates a little bit more so than if they were in it and they were timid about it and they didn't want to play, then you're like, okay, maybe we don't want to get them hurt, things like that. So
Yeah, I mean DJ still talks about his elbow, like that he hurt this year. Like he's like it still hurts here and there, like it still bothers me, like. And he's just pushing through, and we got to look at. And I don't think nothing crazy is wrong with
probably
it.
just sprained it a little bit.
But I do think that, it does take a toll on you. And it is scary. It's scary to see, like, when he got hurt both times this year, it was a scary moment for me because both times I thought he popped his collarbone out.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I thought he fucking blew his knee out.
Yeah.
And both times, bro, I was very concerned. And the first thing I did was blame myself. Like, why did you allow him to play?
Yeah.
Because you love the sport, you allowed him to play.
You got to live with our decisions, though, right?
Yeah, and he was good, and he would do it again. But it's scary, bro, for sure. It's a scary balance.
Yo, before we move on to the next segment, man, because I know this is one that we introduced a couple shows back, and I know it's something that you want to get in depth with, and I'll let you introduce that. Before we do that, though, I want to give a big shout out to Cutthroat Barbers and Anglers on 38th and Pierce at Wheat Ridge. Shout out to AJ and his team over there at Cutthroat. They provide all the latest cuts in men's hair fashion. Fellas at Cutthroat take the art of barbering to the next level. They've got an open chair for you. Make sure you hit up cocutthroat.com, book yourself a service. Shout out to AJ and his team over there. Shout out to my boy Matt and the Canyon Fly Shop, also in the same location, man. Go get your cut, go get you some flies. They got some great deals going on right now, so make sure you check them out.
Yeah. Hey, make sure you check out AJ and them, man. He always does a great job. He looks out for his people that look out for him, and in tough moments, he comes through in the clutch. So shout out to you, my boy.
Kobe.
This next topic is something that is near and dear to my heart. And we introduced it a few weeks back, and probably we'll have some more, glimpses of it before it kind of
grows into its own
evolves into
thing.
its own little thing. But this is a segment we would like to call "Don't Go Through It, Grow Through It." And in life, we often go through things that either help us today in life with lessons that we go through and how we adapt to those things, or it kind of propels us into that next level of success based off of our triumphs. And in today's episode, we want to touch base with our boy here, Coach Al, and kind of touch base with him about a tough incident that he had to go through as a young parent that most parents don't have to deal with. And before we dive into that, I want to just take a moment to let you know that I want this to go at your pace during this segment. This is your story to tell, and I'm just basically gonna do it from an interview perspective, ask a few questions, and kind of dive into your trials and tribulations, and then also how that helped mature and grow you into the parent that you are today, and how you apply it today with your two youngest.
I'll just say, dude, don't hold back. We'll get into the situation a little bit more, but when we were chosen to go through this situation, and I truly feel we were chosen to go through the situation, I knew that it meant that I was going to have to be an advocate in some areas of the situation, and I'm going to have to talk to people about it. And you get chosen to go through things in order to provide others strength sometimes. And so I think when we were chosen for it, that's kind of the stance I took on it.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, when Dono was a young kid, your family was given some tough information and life-changing news that you guys had to adjust and adapt to. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that structured all of you today. Starting off with what was the situation and what was his diagnosis?
So when Dono, he's my second oldest son, one of four that I have. And when he was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It's the most commonly diagnosed leukemia amongst Latino boys and girls. One of the most diagnosed amongst minority children, but also one of the most beatable forms of leukemia. And so it was a wild summer. Donovan had injured his ankle. He had broken his wrist that summer, and things were just taking a long time to heal up. He started all-day kindergarten, and he would come home and he'd be tired. He'd be at the dinner table, fall asleep at the dinner table, wasn't eating that much. And so you thought maybe the first couple weeks that he was adjusting to his new schedule. And after about 3 or 4 weeks of this, you start to see that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. And so we're watching the Victor Ortiz Floyd Mayweather fight, and noticed Donovan's real pale, just didn't look good. And so we decided that Monday we were going to take him to his doctor, get him seen, did some blood work. The doctor came back, and the doctor, she was blunt, dude. Like, she was straight up about things. And she was like, he's severely anemic. It could be just a blood deficiency in iron, or it could be something like childhood cancer. You go home, we're going to give you a call and let you know the results. So we went home, and we were a wreck. We couldn't figure out what to do, what to think, what to say. Obviously, when people tell you you got a good situation and a bad situation, you tend to wonder if it's going to be that bad situation. You kind of start preparing yourself for the worst situation. You're hoping for the best, but growing up how I did, we always hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And about 7:30 that evening, we get a call, and the doctor confirmed that Donovan does have some sort of form of childhood cancer, and that we needed to get to Children's Hospital right away. And so we hit the highway, called up folks, my mom's and my cousin and my sister and all them, like, hey, we're gonna go and we got to take Donovan in, and this is what they're telling us. That was the 19th, I believe, and or the 20th, And by the 22nd, they had an official diagnosis of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Thankfully, it hadn't got into his spinal cord or anything like that. His white blood cell count was good there, but you know, and within 2-3 days, we were on a path to treating this. He had surgery to put a port in, so they could access his port, and the port basically connected straight to his heart, so he would get medicine through the port. But yeah, it was just go, and we spent his first time in the hospital. We spent about a week and a half in the pediatric ICU, and moved our way out of there. And it was a wild experience, bro. Like when we took him in, they do your blood. They check your blood and your hemoglobin, your white blood count, your platelets, all that good stuff. And like he had a hemoglobin down of like near 3, low 3. And to put that in perspective, if you or I were to drop our hemoglobin right now to 3, normal range is between 10 and 14. And if we were to drop ours down to 3, we'd faint and we'd pass out and we'd be out of it. But being that his was such a gradual kind of decline, his body adjusted, which is why he was falling asleep at the table, which is why he wasn't eating dinner, which is why when he did eat, he passed out right away. And it was his body's attempt to just use only the things they needed to use for energy to be able to keep sustaining, keep going. And so he went to school for like 2 weeks like this, bro. Like it was wild. And obviously in hindsight, you start to question what you're doing as a parent. You're like, well, fuck, dude, I should have noticed this or I should have noticed that. But that's not necessarily the case, and you really can't do that. But yeah.
Well, you actually blew through and answered a lot of the questions, but also sparked a lot more as you were explaining it. And as you explained to the viewers, he was 5 years old when you guys got this news. How old were you guys when you guys heard the news as parents? This is your second go around. So this is for all parents at home, the first child, right, is the experimental one. It's the one where you kind of you're a little bit you're a little bit on edge and don't let him do this, don't let him get into that. No, he can't touch this. No, he can't do that. But then the second one, you let the reins loose a little bit and you let him kind of go through some things. So you guys were still young parents. You were probably thinking, oh, I have it figured out. Yeah. And then boom, you get this news, right? How old were you when you get this news?
I was like 26, 27, 28, somewhere around there. We're late 20s. I mean, he's been, it's funny. I had a Facebook post yesterday that come up on memories. Those things come up. And it was a memory of, him getting his port out.
Yeah.
And that was 2014, so 9 years ago that he got his port out, and he went through 5 years of treatment. So, yeah, man, we were young parents, and yeah, it was different than anything we went through with AJ. But, it's one of those things, dude, that, as a parent, you find out your kids are in a situation, you're going to do everything you can to make sure your kids are right. And I remember that first night when we finally got settled into our room. It's crazy, bro. Like, shout out to Children's and shout out to that whole program. Like, when we got there, dude, we went to the emergency room and they're like, gave them our name. They're like, oh, we already got your room. Come on up this way. And they already had us like taken care of. And so when we got into that situation, he was resting. I got, my wife at the time, my parents, my cousin, everybody that was there. And I was like, yo, when you go see him, you put on that tough face. If you want to cry, you cry out here in the hallway, you cry in the waiting room. We're not crying in front of him. We're gonna offer him strength. We're gonna be strength for him right now because he can't be strong for himself. We need to make sure that it's on our face that there's no fear and that there's nothing wrong with being that way. There's nothing wrong with crying or showing emotion or being afraid, but we need to make sure that we show him that we're strong in this. And I remember just bawling my eyes out, telling him this, feeling weak, telling him to be strong. You know what I mean? Telling my family to be strong. But I thought it was of the most importance because I think, our young people feed off of us, and if you're afraid, they're going to be afraid. And if you're crying, they might feel emotional. They might feel like, oh, I made my mom cry or I made my dad cry. Like, they don't compute things the same way we compute them. And so it was very important that we were strong and provided this strength for him, not knowing what was going to go on. Like the hardest part was like when we get in there, they're like, yeah, he has a form of childhood cancer. Which one at this time we don't know, but we'll know in 2 days. Like they said, we'll know, and they literally, dude, they knew, and then they knew how they were going to attack it.
Yeah, so they were already prepared, but you couldn't have been, right? There's nothing that you could have went through with AJ that would have prepared you guys for
Nah.
this. These were late 20s, right? So
And as a matter of fact, bro,
first,
sorry. As a matter of fact, they told us, don't go on WebMD.
That's what I was just getting
Don't
ready to
go.
ask.
Stay off the internet.
Because like you couldn't have been prepared. So when you first get this news of it could be this or it could be that,
Yeah.
that night when you go home, like what's the emotion? What's the feeling like of going on WebMD? Yeah, they said not to do this, but I need to do this because
Yeah.
I want to be as prepared as I can for my kid and fight this fight with him. Or like what were those feelings? How did you guys adjust that first night? Did you I'm sure you probably didn't sleep much.
No, I slept on that little. I gave his mom the nice recliner, and I slept on the little couch that was in there that was hard as shit. And we tried to sleep, but they'd come in and check his counts and talk to him. They had their at 7 and 7 every day. They had their.
Oh, so they didn't send you home. They told you the news and then
No,
they
we
kept
stood
you
there,
overnight.
bro.
Okay.
Yeah, we stood there.
I
Like
was
he
gonna
was
say-
in the hospital for 10 days, his first stint. Like a week and a half or so inside the pediatric ICU. Like we didn't go anywhere. That was the longest stretch we had away from AJ. There was a point where I would go home for a little bit, come back,
Yeah, take
if
shifts.
Tosh needs to go home, you can go home. She didn't really want to. Like we wanted to be there. We'd have AJ come and see his brother. Either his granddad would bring him or my parents would bring him. So like we worked it out. We weren't leaving. Like you couldn't get us out of there, bro. And it was cool. The hospital actually provides a room, and I don't know if they still do this, but they had like an empty room with a shower and a regular bed in there. And if you needed to go sleep there, they gave you that option to go sleep there. Mm-hmm. And so like we would do that too. We would take shifts at sleeping, like, here, go sleep for a few hours in a regular bed. I'll stay up with him. It was cool in the aspect of where Donovan, like, so the first day we took him, bro, like he was just out of it, dude, like just real lethargic. And then that first day they give him a blood transfusion. They give him a platelet transfusion. And then the very next day, dude, he's like fucking hopping up in his bed, like playing with toys and shit. Like just completely different kid from what we had saw the previous month.
Got a little better.
And it's just the fact that he had energy. He had good blood and good platelets. So I don't, not to get too technical into the leukemia, but like acute lymphoblastic leukemia, like leukemia attacks certain blood cells in your body. And the one that he had, his white blood cells kind of became immature, so to speak, and started attacking his red blood cells and his platelets. White blood cells are there to attack infection. They're there. They're kind of the equalizers in your bloodstream. They anything that's not supposed to be there, they attack and they kill. Wow. Unfortunately, they became kind of mutated or, whatever you want to call it. I call it immature. And they started attacking and killing red blood cells and platelets. And so the red blood cells are your oxygen-rich blood, which, you need that to get your energy and your oxygen throughout your system. And your platelets are what helps you stop your bleeding and things like that. So, side note, one of the little things that we noticed when we took him to the doctor, he had like these little bruises on his neck. They were like if you took like a little Sharpie and just made little dots. Mm-hmm. And that was a telltale sign of platelet deficiency. And so we learned a lot, dude. Like we learned a lot that first week about the body and about your blood and what it does. And, we were ready for, blood transfusions or, bone marrow transfusions if that was necessary. And thankfully it wasn't. But, we learned a lot that first week, and I'm very proud about how we stepped up and was like, all right, we got to do this. Like, let's make it happen. Let's figure out how we got to do this. And we had a lot of support. Our football family, my AJ was playing football at the time. I was coaching. I had to take a couple weeks off from coaching during this whole ordeal. And we got so much love and support from our football family, from our family. It was wild, bro. It's definitely a wild ride. You know, you find out how many people you have in your corner when you go through some dark times, for sure.
And you talked about being strong in front of him and holding in some of those emotions. And I'm sure that was a lot easier said than done. And behind the scenes, there were some tough times where, you know, not only your relationship with Tosh, but just your relationship with others started to take a toll due to your stress and emotions of what was going on with Dono. How did that kind of play a part in everything and let's talk about that a little bit because I know like there's a lot of young families out there who often struggle to handle their own internal emotions as well as kind of be absorbent of others and understanding of others. And it's kind of hard to do. And hindsight being 2020, I'm sure there's some things that you felt you could have did different and some things that you kind of hold true and make sure that you apply to your relationship now, so that way you're still that same understanding person in a situation like this.
Well, life don't stop.
It does.
Like, regardless of what we go through, life does not stop. Life continues. Life continues to be the headache that it can be sometimes. And so there was some things going on that we still had to keep in line and keep in track and make sure we were doing right. So obviously there's the stresses of just everyday life. All the while you're doing all this while in a hospital with your son, and quite frankly, you don't know whether or not you're going to see your kid past to his next birthday. You know, you don't know how, obviously the prognosis, once we got the diagnosis, the prognosis was pretty positive, 80% remission or 90% remission rate, 80% cure rate. Okay. And remission and cures is semantics. I mean, remission's living with it. Dormant and cured is after it's been X amount of time, you're considered cured, right? So I think he's not even considered cured. I think he's still considered remission. I think next year will be 10 years total, and I think that's when you can start using the C word, right? But anyhow, going through that, like you still go through the stresses of life, and you still have life stressing you out about different things, but knowing that you have to keep it together. Like E40 says, hold it together like a hubcap in the fast lane. Like all the appointments, it became the first 2 months were like the wildest 2 months. Like once you get past like the first, couple weeks, they introduce this phase called intensification. And that's literally when they eradicate the disease out your body. And, they use chemotherapy and he didn't have any radiation or anything like that, but they use chemotherapy to treat the illness. And so we're spending like 3 hours a week at the hospital. During intensification, his immune system goes down. And so he's susceptible to infection. So fevers, we got to treat like fucking 99 degrees, we got to treat like it's 105. 105, we got to treat like it's 150. You know what I'm saying? Like
everything's intensified.
Yeah, bro. And so his first 3 months, 2 months of that was intensification. We spent a couple different stints at the hospital. Like he caught strep throat in the morning, and then by the evening it had spread to his bloodstream. And so like we had to spend, I spent like 5 or 6 days in the hospital for that. They used to have this thing called Beads of Courage, and I'm kind of all over the place right here, but they used to have this thing called Beads of Courage, and it was a cool little program. So the thing about Children's Hospital is they have all these different programs, bro, for these kids going through these trials. And one of the programs is Beads of Courage, where you get a bead for every visit to the hospital, for every poke, for every transfusion, for every chemotherapy that you got. Like you get a certain bead for it, and each bead was different. And so you'd get bead for your hospital stays, bead for emergency visits. And so by the time Donald was done with all his treatment and everything, his bead strand, if you did it like one long strand, his bead strand was probably about 7-8 feet long.
Wow.
It was just this long strand of beads. But we say that life doesn't stop. 2 months to the day after Donald was diagnosed with his cancer, my mother got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we were going through it. I was going through it from two different ends.
Yeah.
And I remember that day, it was actually the anniversary was a couple of days ago. I remember that day though, finding out, bro, I was like, what the fuck else?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a religious person really. I'm more spiritual, and I've had my tussles with what people perceive as God and my belief system and things like that. And it was a very vulnerable moment where I was just like, wow, all right, motherfucker, what else are you gonna give me?
Yeah.
Like, what else can we go through? Like, my son's going through some shit that he shouldn't have to go through at 5 years old. And my mom is one of the nicest people in the world that I knew.
And you're questioning everything at that point.
Yeah, bro. Like, everything. My faith, my existence, everything.
Yeah.
Like, why am I even here? Like, why do I have to go through this shit? And it got woe is me and got very selfish for a little point there where it was just like, yo, shut the fuck up. You're not going through shit, bro. Like, these people are going through it. Like, I got to go through it. I got to be there for them. Like, again, had that conversation not only with myself, but those around us. Like, yo, we got to be strong. We got to prevent a good front. We got to make sure mom's good. We got to make sure Donald's good. And so it just added more stress to the fire. And, thankfully my mom's got through her situation. It was crazy seeing her go through it and then seeing Donovan go through it because it was completely different. As an adult, the ramifications of the situation. As a child, you don't. And so my mom knew at times where she felt like this can kill me, and where Donovan was just like, yeah, let's go get poked.
Going
And,
through life.
like it, I like to say Donovan, dude, like, and I don't know how much of he's had a chance to process any of that shit, but like Donovan took it in a way that was just incredible, bro. Where he was just like, he's very strong. One of those times we had to go to the emergency room. They used to put numbing cream on his port before they accessed him, so he didn't feel the poke, and there was no time for that, and so he just poke it. And after that, he like didn't care about numbing cream.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, because I'm a big believer of like everything happens for a reason, and and we talk about religion and like there's a higher being, and I do think that that there's a plan, and that we all have a plan, we all have a story that's already written, and we just have to live that, and we can still make revisions to that and everything. But do you think at any given time that Dono going through what he went through at the same time as your mom going through what she went through was kind of them both showing each other the strength and the courage and even helping you get through that time?
for
Because
sure.
like, for me, like if I would just put myself in your mom's shoes, like seeing her grandson fight that same fight inevitably, you know what I mean? Like in different rounds, but the same type of fight would give me strength to continue to push and have the will to fight. Because sometimes when people get news like this, we're quick to shut down
Yeah.
and not to take on that fight. And I know if I had a grandchild or a child or somebody who was going through something like that, then how could I, like you said, selfish, right? How can I say poor me, or I can't do this if he's doing it, right? Do you think that they motivated each other in any way to kind of push through their each other's strength?
I definitely think, I don't know whether it was motivation or what it was. I definitely think they needed each other at that particular moment, especially because that was the most intense portion of treatment for Donald. Like he got 3.5, 4 years of chemo treatment, 3.5 years of chemo treatment. 5 years was the process, but like during that particular moment was the most intense moment to go through of his treatment. And I don't know that he needed her as much as she needed him. Like it was, and she'll tell you this, and moms will tell you this, and she says it all the time. Like, we needed each other to go through it to get together. Mm-hmm. That's why she got sick, and that what happened. And I believe things happen for a reason, and I truly believe that what doesn't kill us does make us stronger. Mm-hmm. And so I did say, when Donovan got diagnosed, and then a few months later when my mom got diagnosed, like, this is part of our story, and we're going to have to use our story to be inspiration for somebody else's story. And just as people in the past that were going through the same situation that we got to meet or got to hear their stories were our inspiration to get through what we're going through. And so I've never shied away from Donovan's situation, just from the viewpoint of a father, and my mom's situation from the viewpoint of a son. I can never understand what they went through. And I know Donald does great now. He's doing great. But I know mentally some of the things that he deals with, I think, stem from a lot of what he went through.
Yeah.
Right. So I can never put myself in their shoes and understand what they went through or what they're feeling or what they go through now. My mom, with the surgery she's gone through, the reconstruction that she's gone through, from the mutilation of her body due to cancer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can never understand that. I could never sympathize with that any more than saying I understand, right? But I also feel like our testimonies are what helps other people get through their tests.
Sure.
And so I do feel like we were chosen for it, man. Like, for whatever God's cruel plans were, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do feel we were chosen. And I do feel like you never know how strong you have to be until you have to be strong. And I don't think we understood how strong we can be or how unified as a family we can be, or, you know, what we have to overcome until we had to overcome it. And it's like running them snake drills, bro. Like, you feel like you're going to die and you're going to throw up right there 20 yards in. And then you find yourself at the end of the snake drill. And you understand that you can put yourself and push yourself past a point that you thought was possible. And it's the same thing when you go through trials and when you go through tribulations as a family or individually. Like, you're only as strong as your death, right? Like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We have the ability to overcome. We just got to figure out a way to tap into that ability.
Man, great said, brother. You know, on that note, I'm gonna ask you one more question in regards to this, but I don't want you to answer it until we dive into the next section of this, because I would like to know if there was anything that, you know, going through all that, whether it had to be with, you know, Dono's health, through the treatment, relationships with people outside of that, and how you hadn't juggled outside life along with the stresses, but any of that you take and apply with the two younger boys now. I want you to answer that when we dive into that. But before we do, I just want to give a special shout out to you, your family, every one of your supporters through that time, but also to Dono. Dono, you know, you went through something that not a lot of people can go through in life, and talk about it and come out of it on the other end successful. And you're a smart young man who has accomplished a lot to this point, and you're not done accomplishing things either in life. And, you know, like your dad said, not to shy away from this. This is your story. This is your testimony that's going to help other people throughout their tests. So, you know, I just want to thank you for sharing your story with not only me but our viewers, and also just, you know, tip my hats out to you and tell you that I wish that I could have half the strength that you showed getting through what you got through. And, you know, I'm very proud of you and what you've accomplished.
I appreciate you, bro. Appreciate that. Like I said, man, you got two choices, bro. You just sit there and you wither away and you die, and you say, woe is me, and why is this happening to me? Or you figure out, you dig deep, and what doesn't kill us makes us better. And, you know, I can say that Donovan has made me a better man. Just experiencing what we had to go through, Donovan has helped make me a better man. My mom has helped make me a better man, a more understanding person, more appreciative of the fact that today is today and tomorrow isn't promised. And, you know, rolling it over into the present day, you know, with my boys, my young boys. Yeah. Like, I understand that it's a different situation for every person. And that was part of the deal with Donovan, was like, when we're like, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. Like, there's nothing that you could have done to predict that your kid's going to get leukemia. That shit just happens. Mm-hmm. Like, it's nothing hereditary. There's nothing genetically that we can say this was the situation, right? Like, it just happens. And so, like, I always worry about it at doctor's appointments when Donald has to go see a doctor, because, like, his risk isn't necessarily what he went through coming back. It's new things happening based off of the side effects of the medicines that he had to take, right? So that's always my fear when we go. And it's less more now than it used to be. I remember when immediately after his 5 years of what they consider treatment, immediately after, like, it was a little stronger, and it's gotten weaker and weaker as we go on, to the point now where it's not it's in the back of my mind, but it's not necessarily something I think about. But with the kids, with Zion Kai, I can't really focus on the what ifs in situations like that. Obviously, I treat fevers differently.
Yeah.
But I also know their situation's different. And, my niece was like having some anemia, and it triggered a lot of stuff in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
When Malachi was little, he had like this wild ass hair, and Isela and my mom decided to cut it off. And they told me, oh, it's just hair, it'll grow back. And that triggered I was so fucking hurt, bro. Like it triggered a lot in my mind, because we used to say that about Donovan. Yeah. And then when it came time to me to shave Donovan's head, he didn't want to shave his head. He was reluctant about it. And I remember the day he started losing his hair. It's during that first 3-month process. The first 2 months didn't do shit, bro. We're like, wow, maybe he's not going to lose his hair. Like, usually they lose their hair right away. Like, he's doing good. And we're eating breakfast at this place. And I look down on Donovan's plate. I'm like, these motherfuckers got hair in his food. What the fuck? And, I go and rub his head like it's okay. And, like, when I did like this here, I just watched hair fly off his head. And it fucking triggered me, dude. Like, it hurt so bad, bro, because it's not even my hair. But I seen it in his face, dude. Yeah. I seen it in his face. And when I seen that was the first time I seen Dono, cancer affect him. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, oh, man, like, this bothers him. Mm-hmm. I used to love his little fuzzy head. But he used to feel a certain way when people rub his head. Yeah. He'd let me and his mom rub his head or kiss his head. But he'd feel a different way about it when other people did. And that was the only time that I seen cancer really affect Dono. And then growing up, there's been situations where you can tell just like dude, he was on like steroids and shit. Like he would have to do like, so when we got to our normalized kind of, this is what we're doing for the last 2 years of treatment, it was like every 12 weeks he'd go get a spinal tap. Every 6 weeks, he would get access through his port, this stuff called vincristine. And then every 6 weeks, he'd have to do a fucking, like a 7-day cycle of steroids. And like the changes in his physically, from the steroids blowing him up a little bit. His appetite during his steroid regimen, his aggression during his steroid regimen, like there were tangible things where you seen cancer affecting my son, and it wasn't even the cancer; it was the treatment of the cancer. You know what I'm saying? But I again, though, I keep going off on tangents, but like I remember when he was like he wasn't taking his pills, and because like it got to a point where he was taking 30 pills on Wednesday because they couldn't break him down to give bigger milligrams. Like he had to take 30 milligrams of methotrexate, and he fucking just did not want. He was tired of taking his pills, bro. Mm-hmm. And so it was a struggle. And so we were like, yo, wonder if we break him up, put him in orange juice, give him shots. Let's try it. Boom, that shit worked. And we'd take him for his checkup, and they'd be like, is he taking his medicine? Like, yeah, man, we figured it out. Like, he was having a hard time doing this. We started putting in orange juice and started taking it. And this goes to speak about the cool shit about children's is, the studies they're part of, while they like to keep their kids in a therapeutic range, is what they call it. So they like to have their ANC between like 500 and 1,500. ANC is basically like your immune system. Mm-hmm. They like to see it between a certain range because that way they can see the medicine working. Wow. Come to find out, the orange juice was helping metabolize the medicine faster. And so although he's getting the medicine, they're not seeing him stay in a therapeutic range. And so it's not looking like the medicine's he's even taking it. And so, we tell them this one week, and the next week we go back and they're like, wow, this is what we found out. Dr. Graham is talking to some of his colleagues, and they found out in this other study that orange juice and citric juice metabolizes the medicine faster, so you can't take it with orange juice. So now we're back to, how do we get him to take these 30 fucking pills? Yeah. And so it was just workarounds like that. It was one time Donald's mom was like, did you take your pills? He's like, yeah, let me smell your breath. Make sure you took them. Like, she's just playing with him. And he was like, and then she just was curious and went and looked in the trash can, and you spit them out.
Yeah, man. And that's tough because, perspective. Nowadays kids don't want to take Tylenol.
Yeah, dude.
You
No,
know what I
it's
mean? Let alone taking 30 pills a day. And again, that just speaks to like the strength that he had that he doesn't even realize
Yeah.
that he had. Even today, right? Even today
Yep.
to think back and look like I went through that, like he still can't fully understand the strength that it took for him to get through that.
well, and how do you
You
tell
know
your
what I
kid
mean?
like I
Because-
understand you don't want to take this, and I don't want you to have to take this,
Yeah.
but you're gonna take this.
You're gonna have to take this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not your Flintstone vitamin. Like you need this,
Dude, we
And
tried
then
so much shit.
you talk about triggers. It's crazy. Like you never know what somebody else's past experience, like little things trigger them, and that's why it's so important to like
Be respectful, dude.
pay attention to people's body language and be respectful of other people's like emotions and boundaries, because you never know that the smallest thing can just trigger the most upsetting memory, right? And you talk about, them shaving who did you say was it Malachi's head?
Yeah.
Yeah, shaving Malachi's head, triggering
Yeah.
old thoughts about Donald, and who would have known? Like every boy at some age, once his hair, depending on how it grows, gets cut,
Yeah.
because we want it to evenly come out, or
Yeah.
we wanted to do this, or we wanted to do that. So every young boy gets those kind of buzz cuts here and there, and to know like that could have a different effect on others. So
And there's not much that gets me, bro. There's not
Yeah.
much that gets me. Like, I got a dark sense of humor, like fucking cancer jokes and shit like that, dude. They don't bother me, dude. That shit don't bother me. But I'll be chilling and fucking ESPN will play one of them things they're great for around this time of year where, they show the
Watched one
kid
the other day.
overcoming things, and that fucking gets me.
Or it could be anything, or it could be like a food or a smell or even orange juice, right?
Yeah, bro.
Like,
Yeah.
I think I kind of remember like
Yeah.
us doing a shot at Frank's house for some reason. And Frank and them were notorious for when they did shots, they would put like a little mixer in there as a chaser. And so
Okay.
their shot would be like pineapple juice and
Yeah.
vodka
Yeah.
in one. And I'm pretty sure like they had like a orange juice and vodka shot one time, and it had it mixed in, and you're like,
Oh, that triggers me for a whole nother reason.
and I feel like you were like, oh, orange juice. It reminds me of when I remember you telling me this story before.
Yeah.
And I think it was something related to that, but that was a trigger.
Yeah.
Like other little triggers in life. It's kind of crazy to see how things can trigger people, but you also have to be very cautious of it and respectful of other things. And I want to talk a little bit more about like how you mentioned like you treat fevers differently now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's both ends of the spectrum where you're probably overly cautious about certain things, and then there's probably things where you're like, you know what, he'll be fine. How do you balance that? Like, how do you balance what is something that I should look into and what isn't? Because before you went through that, you never knew that like the little purple spots are
Yeah.
an indication, and now
Yeah.
you know these things. So now as a parent who's been through it and known things, do you look at every little mark as a potential of that mark, or you know what I mean? Like, is your sense heightened or lowered?
I try not to, bro, because I also have that fear of like wishful thinking. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to think nothing in existence, which is stupid sometimes.
No,
but
it's real.
I don't take any of that and apply it to the kids, to Malachi or Zion, because first of all, I have no control over that. Like, I have no control. I have no say over whether or not they were to catch cancer or leukemia or something like that at all in their lifetime. Like, and so I can't lose my mind over things I have no control over. Fevers, obviously, I treat fevers with some seriousness, but I also understand that sometimes a fever is just a fever. Sometimes a virus is just a virus, and kids get sick. I do have an appreciation for trying to be a little more proactive about things, and so I think if the kids were to get really pale or they were to have issues with healing up, I definitely think it would trigger some senses inside of me to be like, hey, maybe this is something bigger than that. I told you the story about my niece with her being a little anemic, and that triggered some things inside of my mind that started asking questions. But then obviously it turned out to be just something a little bit different in what she's eating, right? Some dietary things. So I think there's always going to be that, but I can't lose my mind over trying to control things I have no control over. All I can do is be prepared for if things happen. Hope for the best and always be prepared for the worst situation. And that's not to say that I'm prepared for my kids to have to go through cancer treatment or anything like that, because I pray that nobody's kids have to go through that. No parents have to go through that. And, you know, obviously there's thousands of kids that go through treatment, and I'm just another statistic of as far as a parent that has a kid that's gone through cancer treatment. I respect that responsibility and I wear it. And I'm here for anybody who gets that unfortunate news. Like, I'm here for them. Like, I'm here to talk. I'm here to be a resource, even if I don't know them, because that's my responsibility, having been chosen to go through these trials, right? But I don't let it affect the way I live my life every day, bro. Like, every day, my kids, I love my kids the same every day. I appreciate them every day. I appreciate my family and people around me every day, because we're here today, gone tomorrow. And I think our job is to have as much impact on this planet as we can while we're here. We're guests on the planet, bro, for a finite number of years.
How do you balance like parental differences though, right? Like, I don't know if Isela or anything has been through anything similar to that severity, before with anybody in her family or anything like that, to where she kind of relates to the struggle, or not. But like, I know there are often times where even in my own relationship where I see certain things as a big deal as a parent and Vita doesn't, or vice versa. And sometimes we have to find that middle ground of what
Yeah.
we want to parent, not the way we were brought up, but the way we want to bring our kids up. And is there ever a time where, you're going through something stressful and you maybe have the experience to deal with it a little bit more than Sala does, and you guys kind of, how do you balance that difference? Like, are you more of a understanding approach, more of a teaching approach, or do you kind of just like, you got to grow through it as much as I had to grow through it, so we're going to grow through it together in this new instance? Or is it like,
I think it's all of the above, to be honest with you, because she has experiences in life that I don't have, and vice versa. And I think that's what we bring into our relationships, right? Like, we bring in our experience. You can't speak on your spouse's experience, but you can speak on your experience. And I think it's the communication of that experience with each other. I went through this and this is this, and you went through this, this, and this. Like, if you have an open understanding of what you guys have gone through, you're able to kind of effectively communicate and collaborate on a plan to get through it. And I think, the same thing with me and Tosh at the time. She had an understanding of what she's been through. I have an understanding of what I've been through. We both had never been through anything like that, but now we're going to have to figure out how to get through it, right? And so now we have these lessons to teach. And, with Isela, like, we communicate. We're a team. You got to be a team, right? And I think we just figure it out as we go. And I don't think because like, if I was to use that experience to kind of influence everything I go forward with, like, I would freak out at the slightest possibility of a fever, or some lethargic looking kids, or you know what I mean. Like, it's easy to go left with that very far. So I don't think that's an option. I think we rely on our experience to teach us our next approach, but I don't think our experiences dictate how we have to go through something. Like, I think it's an influence to kind of help us get through some things, but this approach that I went with Dono may have to be a different approach than I would go with Malachi or with Zion or with myself, right? Like, or with Isela. Like, I think we can take our lessons that we get from our experiences, but it's also now it has a lot to speak to with how we handle things too. And it's, our experiences plus current environments plus other influences equals, result, outcome, or method of attack. So I think it's important that we communicate with each other and we lay it all on the line. I think especially with our partners, right? Like, I think I know a lot about you. You know a lot about me, right? I think when you make relationships with people, friendships with people, you put everything out on the table. Maybe you don't put everything, but there's a lot of stuff that gets out, and you get to know each other, and you get to understand more about each other, and you get to know what makes people, move and what makes people not move. And I think it's important to be able to communicate that with coworkers, friends, family, whoever it is, bro, because you ultimately got to figure out the best way to make things work.
Yeah. Well, one thing that this segment is meant to do, and one thing that this episode has actually shown that it does do is you said it before, and I'm going to end with this is every experience isn't the past experience. Your experience isn't my experience. My experience isn't your experience.
That's right.
But as long as we continue to learn from each experience, whether it's mine, yours, or theirs, and we grow through it and not just go through it, we'll be on the right path to being able to deal with it in the future. Be understandable of everybody's indifferences, be understandable of everybody's triggers and how they respond to things, their body language, and be respectful of everybody's history because everybody goes through things in life and
Yep.
only a few amount of us grow through things in life. So, I appreciate you for sharing that with us, brother. I appreciate you viewers for taking the time to hear us out. And if any of you ever want to reach out to DNA Sports and have a story to tell or want to express these kind of things that we can share with others to help others grow through the similar situations, please hit us up at dnasportsdenver.com.
Yo, again, appreciate you, Don, for I like this segment, bro, because I like what it brings to the table. There's nothing wrong with men being vulnerable and being able to communicate with each other and let us know that there's other people there. And plus, you might be going through some things out there that you think you're going through by yourself. And there's always somebody else. So, again, don't hesitate, man. Anybody going through those unfortunate diagnoses or whatever, let's get through it together.
Man, that was a beautiful, beautiful segment. That's the way to end a podcast.
That's right.
For all you viewers out there, we love you. Thank you for your support. Make sure you check out our socials. Make sure you check out DNASportsDenver.com. Book a session. Leave a mailbag question. Whatever you have to do, but show us love. Like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. And before we leave, we have to give some shout-outs.
That's right. Shout outs to Inkless Laser, Icon Sales and Boxing, Anytime Flood Restoration, my boy Zach G and the Play Harder Podcast, Rebel Promotions, Black Sevens, Janice's Catering, Lash All Beauty, Cutthroat Barbers and Anglers, the Canyon Fly Shop, our folks, the Colorado Wolfpack Football Association, and as always, DNASportsDenver.com. My brother here, man. I appreciate you, dude.
Appreciate you, brother.
Great segment, man.
Yep. Dono, shout out to you, Dono. Remember, your strength, bro, is unmatched by a lot of people. And continue to carry that strength with you throughout life because you're destined to do great things, my friend.
Love you, Dono. We out of here. Peace.